Hello, how are you? My name is Winnie Barawa and welcome to our class on Introduction to Anatomy and Physiology. So by definition, anatomy is the study of body structures, and that is to mean the size, shape, and composition, and the relationship to other parts of the body. While on the other hand, physiology is the study of how the different body parts functions. Now, this including that anatomy is the study of body structures and physiology is the study of body function, this confirms that the anatomy and physiology are closely related. At some point, our body may develop some problems or malfunctions, and as a result, we end up with a new term we call pathophysiology, which is the study of disorders of body functions or body functioning. So anatomy is normally classified based on different approaches or criteria. So in this case, we will start with the first class of anatomy, which we call macroscopic or gross anatomy. Macroscopic or gross anatomy, this is the study of body structures that are visible to our naked eyes, such that when you participate in procedures like surgeries or theater or just in an anatomy class or anatomy practical sessions, you might be able to see structures like the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, without the need of using a microscope. So other people define gross anatomy as the study of body structures without the use of microscope. However, when you're studying gross anatomy or when you're studying microscopic anatomy, they are different approaches that can be used to do that. So this gives us some subclass of gross anatomy, which includes regional anatomy, systemic anatomy, and the surface anatomy. So what does it mean when you are studying anatomy using regional, systemic, or surface anatomy? With regional anatomy, this is the study of anatomy where we focus on the region of our body. So our body is in such a way that we have different regions, including, for instance, the thoracic region, the back, the abdominal region, the lower limbs, upper limbs, and so on. These are different regions. So if you want to study the body structures, but you're basing them on the different regions of our body, that approach of anatomy will be called the regional anatomy. The second one, known as the systemic anatomy, here we are studying anatomy but focusing on each system of the body. That's why we are calling it systemic, from the word system. So systems in the body are wide. You can have cardiovascular, respiratory, skeletal system, digestive system. So when you're studying this anatomy using that approach, then we will call that anatomy the systemic approach or the systemic anatomy. The other class is the surface anatomy, which is the study of internal structures but in relation to our skin surface. Now, surface anatomy is mostly employed or used when we are conducting, for example, physical examination on our patient or generally physical assessment of a person. So, for instance, if you look on the thoracic region, relating it to the skin, you can identify, for example, where the lungs are demarcated or where the heart is located. So when you are identifying body structures but relating it to the skin marking or the skin surface, then we call that anatomy the surface anatomy. Now, the opposite of macroscopic is microscopic. So microscopic anatomy is the study of body structures using a microscope. However, which structures are these? There are two structures that need a microscope. That is the cells and the tissues. So with microscopic anatomy, we get further two subclasses, and that will include cytology and histology. So cytology is the study of cells, while histology on the other side will be the study of tissues. So observing that anatomy can be studied in all these approaches, systemic, surface, and so on, we need to appreciate that our body is organized from least complex to most complex. We will define this in the next slides, but to just mention them shortly is that the smallest or the least complex level of our body is the chemical level. So chemicals could contain, atom, elements, molecules, and when these chemicals come together, they give us the second level, which is the cellular levels. When cells also come together, they give us the third level, which is the tissue level. Tissues, they come together, they give us the organ. And when organs come together, they give us the system. When systems of our body are composed together, they bring together now the most complex level of our organization that we call the organism. Others prefer to call it the organismal level. So the level of organization of our body from the least to the most complex is chemical, cellular, tissue, organ, system, and organisms. So let's define these words one by one. Let's start with the chemical. So the chemical or the chemical level, this is the smallest level of our body, and the chemicals are of two categories. We have the inorganic chemicals and the organic chemicals. Inorganic chemicals, by definition, these are usually the simplest chemicals or molecules in our body, and they could be contained in simple chemicals like water molecules, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and other elements that are contained in our body system. And the opposite of inorganic are the organic chemicals. Normally, these are defined to be very complex, and they contain elements mostly composed of carbon and also hydrogen. So examples of organic chemicals could be carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and also nucleic acids. By nucleic acids, we mean examples like DNA and also the RNAs. Moving into our next, that is the cellular level. So the cell is the basic unit of life. So we'll study more about cells, and we will check on the composition of cells. That is the case of the organelles, how they function, where they are located. So we'll do cell structure later on, but to just introduce it, cell is the basic unit of life. While tissues, this is a group of specialized cells. And we have four basic tissues in our body that include epithelial tissue, which functions a lot when it comes to glands, or epithelium for covering organs and so on. Then we have the nervous tissue, which is very important in allowing transmission of electrical impulses in our body. The muscle tissue, very important for allowing structure, movement, and support for our body. And the connective tissue, which allows connection between body parts or body organs. So those are the basic structure. And the tissue, we've said, is a group of specialized cells. When tissues come together, they give us an organ. So an organ now, by definition, is a group of tissues which are specialized to accomplish specific functions. So our body has different organs. This could include the kidneys, the liver, the bones, and so on. So here are illustrations. For example, we have the small intestines, the large intestines, the kidneys, the lungs, the brain, this is the stomach, the heart, and here's our liver. But when these different parts of our body are brought together, they can give us an organ system. So when specialized organs are put together, they give us an organ system. So by definition, an organ system is a group of organs that contribute to a particular functions. So we have almost 11 organ systems. So starting with like urinary, digestive, respiratory, and so on. So on our illustration here, we have the digestive system, which is mainly for breaking down our complex food substances into unique or simple ions that can be observed. So this system is composed of structures, for instance, the esophagus, the liver, the stomach, small intestines, large intestines, completing at the anal area. Then we have the muscular system, the nervous system, respiratory, circulatory system, and the skeletal system. And the organism, we've said, is the highest level of order. So the organism is our total composition of our organ systems. So when these organ systems are organized in such a way that they are able to produce specific functions of our body, then we get the organism. So the organism is the highest level, and this is now makes the full human being, who will be doing the different other characteristics that we'll see later on. So, studying anatomy, we said, can be done on different approaches, and that can be done using this regional, the systemic, and the surface anatomy. So let's use the systemic anatomy so that we can be able to highlight the different systems in our body and the major categorization that they are put in. So under the category of support and movement, we get here three systems. We have the integumentary system, which focuses more on the skin. So this is our skin. If you were to remove your skin as a garment or as a clothing, this is what it looks like. And the next category is the skeleton, looking at the bones, the skull, the thoracic bones and all those. So the skeleton mainly is there to give us structure, support, and movement, but that's part of our support and movement category. And then the last category are the muscles. So we have almost 400 muscles in our body, and they all do different functions, giving us support, allowing us to do movements, and so on. The next categorization is in the integration and coordination. So three systems here also are contained. We have the nervous system, which is made up of the central and the peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system is composed of the brain and the spinal cord. And the peripheral nervous system is made up of any nerves that are originating from the spinal cord, supporting or supplying any organ or tissues that are in need of the support or the stimulation. So that's what makes the peripheral nervous system. And then the special senses, this is a composition of organs that allow us to achieve the 5 basic sensations in our body systems. And this includes the sensation of smell, vision, hearing, touch, and taste. So in this case, the nose will help us achieve the sensation of smell, while the eyes will allow us to achieve the sensation of vision or seeing. Hearing is achieved by the ears, and the skin will allow us to achieve the sensation of touch. So the tongue found in our mouth allows us to achieve the sensation of tasting. So there are different tastes in our body that we'll see also, but that is achieved by our tongue. And the endocrine system, this is a system composed of chemicals in the name of hormones that allow us to integrate our body to our environment, such that our body should be able to respond to changes in stimulus. For instance, if the temperatures are high, our body system is able to coordinate that and produce hormones that can help us regulate temperature changes or environmental changes in our bodies. Next category is transport system. This is simply allowing us to transport our substances in the body from one part to the other. So here we have blood, cardiovascular, and also the lymphatic system. So in the blood system, we are looking at the red blood cells, platelets, white blood cells, the plasma. This mostly acts as a medium. So it's the medium area where the substances get to be transported. For example, oxygen will be transported through attaching to the red blood cells, and they'll be taken from the lungs all the way to the body organs and tissues. Under the cardiovascular system, here we got our heart, and the heart works together with the blood vessels, that is the vein and the arteries, to supply blood to different parts of the body. And the other system that works together in these transport systems are the lymphatic system. This is a support system though, because it works together with the cardiovascular system to get rid of any excess drainage that could not be contained in the cardiovascular system. And this fluid is transported in form of the lymphatic fluid or lymph. Next category is absorption and excretion. The main agenda of this category is to allow us to take in very essential nutrients, but also release or excrete waste material. So the system that participates in digestion, like the digestive system, it helps us to break down any complex substances to simple substances and allow them to be absorbed. So in the digestive system, of course, we start with esophagus, taking in the food, goes to the stomach, gets to be broken down, goes to the small intestine, large intestines, and we are able to excrete that what we don't need in form of fecal matter through the anal areas. Then in the respiratory system, we get to achieve the breathing, that is, we inspire and expire. So we get in oxygen and release carbon dioxide, which is now our unwanted gases. And the last category is the urinary system, majorly composed of our kidneys. And the main agenda here is to filter urine and to release any unwanted waste materials, mostly nitrogenous waste, ammonia materials, and so on. And our last category is the reproduction and development. This is achieved by the male and the female reproductive system. In the male reproductive system, we have the composition of the testes moving together into the epididymis and ending up in the penis. So the male reproductive system mainly focuses on production of the spermatozoa that will fuse together with the ovum and produce the zygote that will develop into an embryo and mature into a fetus and will be labored out through the reproduction processes in the female reproductive system. So in the female reproductive system, we get to have the uterus, the fallopian tube, the ovaries, and the vagina. This is where the fetus grows and will be produced later during labor processes. So having said that the organism is the highest level of our complicity, so when the organism has life, then what do we describe as the characteristics of life? So there are major characteristics that should be presented by an organism to say that this organism possesses life. And one of it is growth and development. So by growth and development, we mean the organism is able to have ability to grow both in size and shape, but should also have ability to possess characteristics of perceiving the environment, understanding, and having ability to interpret, that is cognition. The next category of characteristics is reproduction, that is ability to bring forth offspring or fellow beings that own or have the same characteristics as the person who is producing them. The other category is heredity, and by heredity is the ability to pass on similar characteristics to the next offspring. And under hemostasis, here we talk about being able to maintain a stable internal environment. For example, in the cases where maybe the temperature is high, is our body able to capture that and bring it into normal level? Or maybe when times in the body is producing glucose, is the body able to maintain an environment where we do not have excessive glucose production? So the ability to maintain a normal internal environment, we call that hemostasis characteristics. But again, the person needs to have metabolism or ability to participate in metabolic processes, that is chemical reaction, breaking down large complex materials into simple materials. Next characteristic is cellular characteristics, and by cellular it means it's the organism composed of cells that has the required characteristics. Like can the body have DNA replication, RNA, translations, and so on. So is the person made of cells, and does the cells contain the characteristics of life? The last characteristics is the response. So this is ability to respond to stimulus in our environment. And by stimulus, we mean different factors. For instance, stress, fear, excitement. All these are different stimulus in our body or in our environment that we should be able to show a response to it. So with characteristics of organism, we have agreed we need to display growth, reproduction, heredity, hemostasis, metabolism, cellular characteristics, and finally, response. If you enjoy our work, don't forget to give us a like. Then comment there what is your favorite session in the class, what did you learn, or do you have further clarification that you need us to make? Don't forget to share it with your friends who may be interested in similar content and work. And to keep us posted, subscribe or click on the subscribe button there to be the first to be informed or notified when our next class is on. And lastly, thank you so much for being with us to this last part of this class, and see you or bye-bye. See you in the next class.